In the spring of 1939, long before bombs fell and sirens screamed, Marcus still believed that the world was a safe place. He lived in a small farming village near the eastern border of Germany. The houses were simple, built from wood and stone. Every morning, smoke rose from chimneys as families prepared bread and soup. Children ran barefoot through dusty roads, chasing dogs and laughing without fear. Marcus was one of them. At 10 years old, his life was ordinary. He woke up early to help his father in the workshop. His father, a quiet and hardworking man, repaired doors, tables, and wagons for neighbors. In the evenings, Marcus sat beside him, learning how to use tools, dreaming of one day becoming a master craftsman himself. His mother was the heart of their home. She sang while cooking. She told stories at night. She believed that as long as family stayed together, nothing could truly harm them. But history had other plans. In September 1939, radios across Europe announced the invasion of Poland. The name of Adolf Hitler was suddenly everywhere, in newspapers, on walls, in speeches shouted through loudspeakers. Soldiers marched through cities, flags covered buildings, and propaganda promised glory, victory, and a great future. At first, Marcus did not understand what war meant. To him, it was just noise on the radio. But soon, the noise became reality. German trucks began passing through the village. Armed men with cold eyes stopped at houses, asking questions, checking documents. Posters appeared on every corner, showing smiling soldiers and brave boys in uniform, inviting young people to serve the nation. Teachers stopped coming to school. Lessons were replaced by patriotic songs and military drills. Children were taught that dying for the country was the highest honor. Marcus felt uncomfortable, but he stayed silent. Silence was safer. In 1941, his father was taken. One morning, 2 officers knocked on their door. They said Germany needed workers for factories and roads. They promised good food and fair treatment. Marcus's father knew it was a lie, but refusal meant prison or worse. He hugged his wife. He hugged his son. Then he was gone. Months passed. Letters stopped coming. No one knew where he was. Some whispered about forced labor camps. Others whispered about death. Marcus's childhood ended that day. Without his father, life became harder. Food was rationed. Bread became thinner. Soup became weaker. His mother grew sick from exhaustion. Marcus quit school and worked on farms to earn potatoes and milk. By 1943, bombings reached nearby towns. At night, the sky glowed red. Windows shook. Children hid under beds. Mothers prayed silently. Fear became normal. In 1944, the village looked like a ghost of itself. Many men were gone. Some had died. Some had disappeared. Some had never returned from the front. Then came the lists. One cold morning, a military truck arrived. Officers gathered boys in the square. They held papers with names written in black ink. Every name was a sentence. Every name was a future taken. Marcus stood in line with trembling hands. He tried to look brave like the older boys. His mother watched from behind, her face pale, her lips moving in prayer. When the officer shouted Marcus Weber, time seemed to stop. His heart dropped. He stepped forward. The officer looked at him and nodded. 14 strong enough. That was all. No question. No choice. That night, Marcus packed his small bag. One shirt, one photo of his parents, a piece of bread wrapped in cloth. His mother sat beside him, holding his hand. "Come back alive," she whispered. Marcus wanted to promise, but he couldn't, because deep inside, he felt something terrible. He felt that he was walking into darkness, and he might never return. The journey to the training camp lasted 2 days. For Marcus, it felt like 2 years. Dozens of boys were packed into an old military truck. There were no seats, only cold metal benches. Some held small bags, some held nothing. Some still believed they were going on an adventure. Marcus did not. He sat quietly, holding his mother's photo in his pocket, feeling every kilometer pull him farther away from home. When they arrived, reality hit them like a slap. The camp was surrounded by barbed wire. Watchtowers stood in every corner. Armed guards watched them as if they were prisoners, not children. A sign at the gate read, "Discipline makes victory." Inside, it meant something else. Obey or suffer. They were immediately shaved, sprayed with chemicals, and given oversized uniforms that smelled of sweat and dirt. Marcus looked at himself in a broken mirror and barely recognized the thin, scared boy staring back. That night, he slept on a wooden bed without a mattress. No blanket. No pillow. Only cold. At 5 in the morning, whistles screamed. "Wake up!" Training began before sunrise. Running, crawling, shooting, marching, shouting slogans, repeating orders. Again, again, again. Anyone who slowed down was punished. One boy vomited from exhaustion. He was forced to keep running. Another collapsed. He was dragged away. No one saw him again. Food was scarce. A piece of bread, watery soup, sometimes nothing. Hunger became permanent. Marcus dreamed about his mother's cooking every night and woke up with tears on his face. But crying was forbidden. Crying meant weakness. And weakness was dangerous. Instructors told them, "You are not boys, you are weapons." They were trained to shoot targets shaped like human figures. Every hit was praised. Every miss was insulted. Do you want to die? Do you want to shame your family? Those words were knives. Slowly, something changed inside Marcus. He stopped asking questions. He stopped thinking. He followed orders. That was the only way to survive. Some boys became cruel. They bullied weaker ones to avoid being bullied themselves. Fear turned into anger. Anger turned into violence. Marcus refused to join them. He helped secretly, sharing crumbs, helping injured boys stand, whispering encouragement at night. But he did it quietly. If officers saw him, he would be punished. One winter evening, something happened that he never forgot. A boy named Lucas collapsed during night training. He was shaking, lips blue from cold. He whispered, "I can't, I can't." The instructor kicked him. "Stand up." Lucas didn't move. The instructor pulled out his pistol. Everyone froze. A single shot echoed through the camp. Lucas's body fell into the snow. Silence followed. Then training continued. No explanation. No mercy. That night, Marcus realized this place was not about protecting the country. It was about destroying souls. After months of training, rumors spread. Germany was losing. Bombings were closer. Supplies were weaker. Officers were nervous. Some whispered at night, "The front is collapsing." But officially, they were told, "Victory is near." Marcus no longer believed words. He believed what he saw. Wounded soldiers returning. Trucks full of coffins. Trains packed with refugees. He knew something was wrong. Very wrong. Then one morning, his name appeared on another list. This time, it was not for training. It was for deployment. Front line. Real war. At 14, holding a rifle almost as tall as himself. As he packed his bag again, Marcus felt something new. Not fear. Not sadness. A cold, sharp understanding. If he went to the front, he would not come back. The train to the front moved slowly. as if even the WWII wheels understood what waited ahead. Marcus stood near the small window of the cattle wagon, staring at fields that looked peaceful and untouched. It was hard to believe that just a few hundred kilometers away, men were tearing each other apart. Inside the wagon, no one spoke loudly. The bravest boys from the camp were now silent. Reality had finally caught them. When they arrived near the eastern front, the air itself felt different, heavy, burned, sharp with the smell of smoke and metal. The sky was gray even when there were no clouds. Explosions echoed in the distance like constant thunder. Marcus was handed real ammunition. Not training rounds. Not wooden rifles. Real bullets. Stay in formation. Shoot when ordered. Do not hesitate, the officer barked. They were placed in trenches dug into frozen ground. Mud reached their ankles. Rats ran between sandbags. Bodies, covered in thin sheets, lay only meters away. Marcus tried not to look. The first attack came at dawn. Artillery screamed across the sky. The ground shook violently. Dirt and debris fell into the trench. Boys around him began firing wildly into smoke they could barely see through. Marcus froze. His hands trembled so badly that he could not pull the trigger. Next to him, a soldier no older than 17 was hit in the chest. He fell backward, eyes wide open, blood spreading across his uniform. He tried to speak. Nothing came out. Marcus stared at him, unable to move. The officer shouted, "Shoot." Instinct finally took over. Marcus fired blindly toward the horizon. He did not know if he hit anyone. He did not want to know. The battle lasted hours. When it ended, the field ahead was covered with bodies. German, Soviet, it no longer mattered. They all looked the same. That night Marcus could not sleep. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw the dead boy beside him. He heard the unfinished words that never came out. War was not glory. War was not honor. War was mud, fear, and screaming. Days passed. Supplies grew thinner. Cold grew harsher. Some soldiers whispered that Berlin was being bombed heavily. Others said the Allies were advancing from the west. No one knew the full truth, but everyone felt it. Germany was losing. One afternoon, Marcus witnessed something that shattered whatever belief he still had. A small group of captured civilians, men and women, were brought near their position. They were accused of helping the enemy. There was no investigation. No evidence. An officer gave an order. Shots were fired. The civilians fell. Marcus felt his stomach twist. These were not soldiers. They carried no weapons. One of the women had looked directly at him before the shots rang out. Her eyes were not angry. They were terrified. That night, Marcus understood something clearly. If he stayed, he would become part of this. If he stayed, he would lose whatever was left of himself. But escaping from the front was not like escaping from training camp. Desertion meant execution. Immediate. Public. He had seen it happen. A young soldier who tried to run was caught 2 days later. They lined everyone up and shot him in front of them as a warning. The message was simple. There is no way out. Still, the idea began growing inside Marcus like a dangerous seed. Run. At first, he pushed it away. Impossible. Suicide. But every explosion, every scream, every unnecessary death fed that idea. Run. One evening, during a particularly heavy bombardment, chaos broke through the lines. Communication wires were cut. Officers shouted conflicting orders. Smoke covered everything. For a moment, just a moment, there was no structure. No control. Marcus felt his heart pounding harder than ever before. This was the only chance. He looked around. Men were focused on survival. No one was watching him. He thought of his mother. He thought of his father, whose fate he still did not know. He thought of the boy who died beside him. If he stayed, he would die. If he ran, he might die. But might was better than certain. He slowly lowered his rifle, took a step back, another. Then he turned toward the forest beyond the smoke. His legs felt heavy. Every step felt like betrayal. Every step felt like freedom. Behind him, war roared. Ahead of him, darkness waited. Marcus ran. The forest swallowed Marcus like a dark ocean. Branches cut his face, roots tripped his feet, cold air burned his lungs. He ran without direction, without plan, without thought. Only one thing existed in his mind. Don't stop. Behind him, explosions continued. Bullets cracked through the air. Dogs barked in the distance. Somewhere, officers were shouting orders. They were hunting him. After nearly an hour of running, Marcus collapsed behind a fallen tree. His chest felt like it would burst. His hands were numb, his vision blurred. He pressed his face into the wet leaves and tried not to breathe loudly. Every sound felt dangerous. Minutes passed, then hours. Finally silence. No footsteps. No voices. Only wind. He was still alive. But survival had just begun. Marcus had nothing. No map. No compass. No food. No weapon. Only the thin uniform on his back and torn shoes on his feet. He walked at night and hid during the day. He followed rivers when he could, hoping they would lead him somewhere safer. When planes passed overhead, he buried himself under leaves and mud. Hunger arrived quickly. At first, he ate the last piece of bread his mother had given him months ago. He had saved it without realizing why. Now, it tasted like memory. Then it was gone. He searched abandoned farms for anything edible: rotten potatoes, frozen apples, sometimes animal feed. Once, he stole a chicken from an empty house. He killed it with shaking hands and cried while eating it raw. Cold was worse than hunger. Snow fell constantly. Nights were unbearable. He slept in barns, caves, and sometimes under open sky. Frostbite began creeping into his fingers and toes. Several times, he nearly gave up. Once he fell into a half-frozen river. His clothes became heavy with water. He crawled out and lay shaking for hours, convinced he would die. Another time, he was almost caught. While hiding in a hay barn, he heard voices. German soldiers entered, laughing and smoking. They sat only meters from him. Marcus did not move. He did not breathe. Sweat ran down his back despite the cold. One sneeze. One cough. One mistake. Death. After an hour, they left. He remained frozen for another hour before daring to move. Weeks passed. He no longer knew how many days he had walked. His body became thin and weak. His face was covered with dirt and scars. His uniform was torn beyond recognition. He looked more like a ghost than a boy. One evening, exhausted beyond measure, Marcus collapsed in deep snow near a small abandoned road. He could not stand. He could not think. He whispered to himself, "Mother, I'm tired." For the first time, he considered letting go. Closing his eyes. Sleeping. Forever. But then he remembered her voice. Come back alive. With his last strength, he crawled toward a distant light he had seen through trees. A farmhouse. He knocked weakly on the door. No answer. He knocked again. The door opened slowly. An old man stared at him in shock. "Jesus, you're just a child," the man whispered. Marcus collapsed. Darkness took him. When he woke up, he was lying near a fireplace. Warmth surrounded him. A blanket covered his body. Someone placed a cup of soup in his trembling hands. He cried. Not quietly. Not politely. He cried like a child who had survived hell. The old man and his wife were farmers who secretly helped refugees. They hid Marcus for several days, feeding him, cleaning his wounds, giving him civilian clothes. They told him something important. Allied troops were nearby. Freedom was close, but danger was still everywhere. With new clothes and renewed strength, Marcus continued his journey. Each step now carried hope. After nearly 2 months of wandering, starving, and hiding, he finally reached an Allied-controlled zone. A British patrol found him wandering near a ruined bridge. When they asked his age, he whispered, 14. They looked at each other in disbelief. He had escaped death. Again, when Marcus crossed into Allied territory, he did not feel like a hero. He felt empty. British soldiers wrapped him in a blanket and gave him hot tea. His hands shook so badly that he could barely hold the cup. One of the soldiers kept staring at him in disbelief. "You're just a kid," he whispered. Marcus did not answer. He had forgotten how to talk about feelings. At the refugee center, doctors examined him. They were shocked. He was 14 years old, but he weighed less than a 10-year-old. His ribs were visible. His skin was pale. His feet were covered in wounds. More frightening than his body were his eyes. They looked old. Too old. For weeks, Marcus slept. Sometimes 12 hours. Sometimes 14. His body was recovering. His mind was not. At night, he screamed. He dreamed about bombs, about blood, about running. Nurses rushed to calm him. They called it war shock. Today, we call it trauma. But back then, no one knew how to heal it. One day, a Red Cross worker approached him. She held a small list in her hands. "We found your mother," she said softly. Marcus froze. For a moment, he thought he had misheard. "She's alive. She's in a refugee camp in Bavaria." Tears filled his eyes. For the first time since leaving home, he felt hope without fear. The reunion happened months later. A crowded hall. Hundreds of displaced people. Names being called. Families searching. When Marcus heard his name, he stood up slowly. Then he saw her. Thinner, older, gray hair. But her eyes were the same. They ran toward each other. They held each other and cried without words. No speech was needed. They had both survived. Together. After the war, life was not easy. Germany lay in ruins. Cities were destroyed. Jobs were scarce. Food was limited. Marcus returned to school, but studying felt strange. Sitting quietly in a classroom felt harder than crawling through snow. Loud noises made him jump. Arguments made him panic. He avoided crowds. But he did not give up. He worked during the day, studied at night. Slowly, painfully, he rebuilt himself. He learned carpentry like his father. With his hands, he repaired doors, windows, and broken houses. Every repaired home felt like repairing a small part of himself. Years passed. Marcus became a man. He married. He had children. But he never forgot. Sometimes at night, he still woke up sweating. Sometimes he still heard echoes of war. When his son once asked him, "Papa, were you a hero in the war?" Marcus shook his head. "No," he said, "I was a boy who wanted to live." Later in life, Marcus began speaking in schools. He told his story to teenagers who complained about homework and slow internet. He showed them his scars. He showed them old photos. He told them about Lucas, about hunger, about fear, about running through snow. And he always ended with the same words. War does not create heroes, it destroys childhoods. Many students cried. Some thanked him. Some hugged him. Marcus never asked for attention. He only wanted one thing: that no child would ever have to make the choice he made at 14. To run from death, just to live.